I bet.
We're going to walk through a scenario. Like I said, it's completely made up. Might have a career in writing novels after I did this. I'm like, man, this is fun. And a lot of the samples in this binder are based on, all the samples in this binder are based on this scenario, okay? What we're going to do is walk through the scenario. I'll kind of give you the gist of it. And we're going to walk through it by going through tab 15. So if you want to turn to tab 15 and look at the investigative report, this is the summary of the investigation. We're going to walk through, and it is a lot of reading, but the details and the discussion, because I hope it encourages some discussion, come out in the report itself. So, this is case number 2025-10. Made this up. You can assign case numbers or not. It is a helpful way to organize if you're the Title IX coordinator, year and the number of harassment case chronologically that you might have received in that school year. So the year is 2025. This is the 10th case. The complainant is Natasha Romanoff. The respondent is Loki Odison. This complaint was filed December 2nd, 2025. Okay? And that is the last slide. So you don't have to look up on there anymore because we're going to go through, again, binder 17, tab 17 on the binder. If you don't have someone, you can't, don't have a binder in front of you, scoot down so you can see it with somebody else. Okay? Actually, you know what I am going to do, because we don't have enough binders, we'll just pull this up on my screen.
So what
In a minute. Okay. Y'all see that? There we go. Now I can just kind of stand over here and scroll down. Is that Sinead there? Is that good?
Even I can read that.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so you can read it up on the screen. I'll just kind of stand here and scroll through. And I'm going to interject with a lot of tips that will make the writing process much more clear for the decision maker, as well as it'll make it easier if and when there's ever litigation for the parties down the road who are not you to understand what's happening. So first tip is to decide how you're going to address or refer to the complainant, the respondent, and the witnesses throughout the document. In other words, are you going to call the people respondent/complainant? Are you going to call them by their initials? Are you going to call them by their first name? And then be consistent with everybody else you refer to. With an exception, when you are referring to employee witnesses, it's okay to write their name all the way out. Student witnesses, it's helpful to have initials instead of their witnesses, just so their name isn't, you're not identifying it, although it is going to be in the report, so it's not so much confidentiality, it's just, okay? I may or may not have taken my own advice right here, but that's best practice. So we have complainant, NR, Natasha Romanoff, alleges that respondent, LO, followed her, sent her unwelcome text messages, and posted untrue statements on social media about respondent's sexual interaction with the complainant. Specifically, so that's kind of the big broad picture, specifically, complainant alleges that respondent waits for her after complainant's classes and follows her to the next class. At one point, complainant alleged that respondent attempted to have his schedule changed so he had all the same classes as complainant. Complainant alleges that respondent follows her home in his car and sits in his car outside her house for hours. Most recently, complainant alleged that respondent blocked her car with his car when she was trying to leave the school parking lot and would not move until the school resource officer approached him. Complainant also reports that respondent sends her text messages telling her she looks good when she is not anywhere when he's not anywhere around, telling her that she is a slut and a whore, and telling her that if she does not date him, he will commit suicide. Finally, complainant alleges that respondent posts numerous social media posts on TikTok and Snapchat primarily about his supposed relationship with the complainant, despite that they are not in a relationship. Complainant alleges that the social media posts include statements about sexual interactions between complainant and respondent that complainant states did not happen. Complainant alleges respondent has shown these posts to other students during school. So it's a lot, right? It's a lot of information here. At the outset, I'm going to have you turn to tab 4 real quick. Keep your hand in tab 15, but turn to tab 4 and go to the second page of tab 4. That should say complaint form. So at the outset, when the Title IX coordinator receives this information, this form is going to be filled out, and then you see the gray box at the bottom. Maybe it's the next page. Yep, sorry, 3rd page. It should say, it should say for Title IX coordinator use only. Notice that there. Okay. And then you can check quid pro quo, hostile environment, sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, or stalking, and then whether jurisdiction was met. So from the get-go, let me look at someone. You guys are all looking at me like you're confused, or might be looking at a different document. We didn't get tab 4. Or you didn't get tab 4? On the form that I will send you all electronically, you should have that. There you go. Yep, it's there. Okay. Yes, tab. Oh, you have an extra tab 4. Perfect. Yep. Okay, so my point is that even before we get to you as an investigator, the Title IX coordinator is going to do his or her best to assess what the legal category of sexual harassment is. Is it quid pro quo that we're alleging? Is it a hostile environment that we're alleging? Is it assault? Is it dating violence? Is it stalking? So if you were the Title IX coordinator and you received this information, what would you check? You can put more than one. Yes, absolutely. Okay, hostile environment I heard stalking. Okay, those are the two that I would probably recommend putting to. Okay, so that's the assessment you're looking at. And that means for everyone involved in the process, investigator, you are going to be asking questions and trying to figure out whether or not the elements of hostile environment were met and or whether the elements of stalking were met. Okay, and the decision maker, that's what this decision maker is going to be doing at the end. Taking this investigative report and deciding whether all of these definitional pieces of hostile environment were met, same with stalking. For the purpose of this scenario, because this report is already like 17 pages long, I, as the Title IX coordinator in this scenario, just entered stalking. Okay, but you would also go through and do the same thing until you get to the very end and analyze for hostile environment as the decision maker. So when we get to the final written determination by decision maker, I'll walk you through what that would look like if you entered an X on both of those things. But right now we're just going to say it's stalking. All right, so we know we're looking for whether or not Loki was stalking Natasha based on this information, and or if it's not stalking, whether it created a hostile environment, either one. Okay, so now we're going to walk through the background of the parties. And the background of the parties is important. It's not one of the requirements under the regulations, but I found that it's important. Sorry, I'm tying up to the necklace. Because it gives the decision maker information that's important in determining who these people are to each other. Okay, so here we have. Okay, so here we have a situation where the complainant is an 11th grader at Avenger High School. Respondent is also in 11th grade at Avenger High School. Complainant and respondent were involved in a romantic relationship for a short time. Can you hear me if I turn this off? Do you still hear me okay? I've got to get my ears checked. Am I okay turning it off? Okay, I'm sorry. This is really like I'm in a plane going up and down. Complainant and respondent were involved in a romantic relationship for a short time during the summer between their 10th and 11th grade years, but they're no longer together. Prior to that, the complainant and the respondent knew each other as acquaintances, but both parties acknowledged that they were not friends. The school year 2025-26, complainant and respondent have 2 classes together until the complainant asked to be switched out of those classes. Other than the above reported allegations, the complainant and respondent do not interact socially outside of school. So you have a pretty good idea of who they are to each other, and that's helpful, especially because one of the key pieces of sexual harassment is that the conduct is unwanted. It's unwanted. If they were really tight and they have this ongoing back and forth, it raises the question of whether conduct's unwanted. Okay, so that's the background. Let's see what's been done so far. Here's the investigative process. Here's how this information came about. The complainant reported her concerns about the respondent to her counselor at Avenger High School, November 29th, 2025. The Avenger High School principal then who then notified the principal. Principal then contacted the district's Title IX coordinator. That same day, the Title IX coordinator contacted the complainant to discuss the supportive measures, with or without filing a formal complaint, and to explain the process for filing a formal complaint. The complainant filed a formal complaint on December 1st, 2025. Notice of allegations was sent to both parties on December 2nd, 2025. This investigative process piece is important because when it gets to the decision makers, the decision maker is going to have to write this. This is one of the key provisions of a decision maker report, that you have to explain the procedure from the date the information came to the school until the decision. The decision maker is someone sitting in a separate office having had nothing to do with this so far. And so, to the extent that the investigator can provide all of this information to the decision maker, that's why it's here in this investigative report. It also gives the decision maker some understanding as to how this all came about, okay? So writing down who reported to whom, how did it get to the Title IX coordinator, and then the second half of that paragraph is kind of a CYA. Did the Title IX coordinator do what they were supposed to do? Did they reach out? Did they offer supportive measures? Was a notice of allegations sent? Check, check, check. Okay. An investigator was assigned on December 2nd. The investigator provided notice of interview to complainant on December 3rd. The notice included date, time, and location. Again, this is all kind of a CYA. We did what is required in the regulations. The investigator, I'm skipping down to this next paragraph, provided notice of interview to the respondent on December 3rd as well. And you can combine those paragraphs. Notice of interview was sent on this date to both parties. It included this information. Again, we're telling not necessarily the decision maker, but a future court, we have followed this process. We have checked the boxes. Okay. The complainant was interviewed for the first time on December 6th, 2025, from 9 a.m. to 10:15 a.m. The interview took place at Avenger High School. The following individuals were present: the complainant's mother, Melina Vostokov, the investigator, Nick Fury, and that's it. Investigator Fury took notes of the interviews which had been provided to both parties and to the decision maker for review. All of these boilerplate language, the paragraphs that I just got done explaining, are in the template, and you just have to plug in date and time and names, okay? So it's already written for you. Just plug in the date and times and the names. And that's tab 14 if you kind of want to compare back and forth. Respondent was interviewed for the first time on December 6th from 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 at Avenger High. The following individuals were present: respondent's father, Odin Asgard, and the investigator, Nick Fury. Investigator Fury took notes of the interviews which had been provided to both parties and to the decision maker for review. The following witnesses were interviewed on December 9th, or from December 9th through December 15th at Avenger High School. You don't have to document exactly the date and time of each witness interview, okay? But having an idea of the span of time gives, again, a future court information that we were being prompt and immediately responding. So here are the witnesses that are interviewed: Tony Stark, TS, student; Pepper Potts, student; Bruce Banner, student; Thor Odison, student and brother of Loki; Peter Quill, student; Mary Jane Watson, student; with an asterisk next to her name because Mary Jane Watson was interviewed upon request following the 10-day review of evidence. So when Loki saw the 10-day evidence and he said, why didn't you interview Mary Jane Watson? You should. The investigator went back and added Mary Jane Watson. Okay. James Rhodes, the school resource officer, Scott Lane, who is a teacher, and Hope Pym, who's a counselor. The following documentary evidence was reviewed between December 6th and December 15th. Complainants and respondents' schedules, complainants' grades, a screenshot of text messages obtained by the investigator from both complainant and respondent, screenshots of Snapchats that were posted by respondent about complainant, TikTok videos posted by respondent, an Instagram account post, footage of the school security camera between November 10th and December 10th, okay, with a footnote. So let's go down to that footnote real quick. This is just more of an instructional suggestion, because this is true for most schools. The school security camera are set to erase every 30 days. Is that how your district works? A lot of them are, 30 days, 2 weeks, something like that. When the investigation began, the school's technical service coordinator copied and saved the footage from the previous 30 days. But anything after that was erased. That is just something to suggest if you don't have security footage for the entire time that it was alleged. You just might want to know and explain why. Okay. Complainant provided additional text messages following the 10-day review of evidence. So that's another piece that complainant came back and said, hey, you need to look at these text messages. So we added those, and investigator Fury reviewed those messages on January 3rd. Evidence and summaries of the interviews with witnesses were shared by the investigator with the parties on December 18th. Each party had 10 days to respond to the evidence, and there's a footnote to that as well, because in this scenario, and again, this is just in case this ever happens to you, parties were given additional days to respond because of Christmas break. It just so happened to fall over Christmas break, and so even though they were given the evidence on December or whatever I said, they didn't actually have to respond until later because of Christmas break. Complainant responded by submitting additional screenshots and messages between complainant and respondent. Respondent requested an additional witness, Mary Jane Watson, be interviewed. Investigator interviewed Mary Jane and included a summary of that interview in this report. Investigator also reviewed screenshotted messages and includes a screenshot here. The point of me adding this in here is to tell you that if you have, during that first 10-day review of evidence, someone saying, hey, you need to interview this person, you need to look at this evidence, you don't have to start that 10-day review over, right? So you interview the new person, you look at the new evidence, and then you include it in this investigative report that goes to the decision maker. You don't then have to say, okay, here's your evidence again, you have another 10 days. Here's your evidence, here, oh, more evidence. Okay, here's your evidence again, you have another 10 days. So you can just include it in the final report because they are getting it now. And if they have any concerns about it, they can address those concerns during this second 10 days that they can ask questions of each other. Okay? On January 10th, 2026, the investigator submitted a final investigative report to the Title IX coordinator for distribution to the parties and the decision makers. So that's the investigator's summary of what has been done, the process. Now, the investigator is going to summarize the evidence, summarize the interviews, and summarize the documentary evidence. And this is where it gets really interesting. Okay? I'm just curious right now, based on your own personal biases with regard to the vendors, how many think that Loki stalked Natasha? How many think Natasha made it all up? How many are reserving judgment because you're good, non-biased investigators? Good job. All right. That was a trick question. Yes, good job. You answered well passed. Okay, so first person interviewed is the complainant, Natasha. And I did, again, just to repeat, having the reference to complainant, respondent, witnesses be consistent is helpful. I read reports all the time where someone refers to someone as the complainant, and then later refers to the person as a name, and then refers to them with an initial. And I'm like, wait, are we talking about the same person? I'm forgetting. So just pick one and stick with it. Okay, complainant began by, and this is a summary of the interview with the complainant. So after you've kind of gone through your process, now you're going to summarize the interviews that you've had, starting with the parties. Okay, complainant began by explaining that at first, she didn't want to get respondent in trouble. But it got to a point where she wasn't sleeping and her grades were dropping because of the situation. And what red flag is going off right now as you're hearing this? Not red flag, but is that information relevant? I'll say that again. Contributes to that hostile environment because she's being affected, perhaps being denied opportunities to an education, grades are slipping, she's not sleeping, and that is evidence of that component of the hostile environment definition. Okay? Complainant stated that she didn't try out for volleyball this year, even though she played the last 2 years at Avenger High School, because she didn't want to give respondent another opportunity to show up at her games. Again, one more thing that she's not participating in because of this situation. Complainant then explained that she and respondent began dating at the end of the previous year. They met at a party at a mutual friend's house in June 2025. Complainant said nothing happened at the party. She and respondent just talked most of the night, and he gave her a ride home. They began dating after that, but complainant felt respondent liked her more than she liked him, and so decided to end things sometime around the middle of July. Complainant stated that for the most part, respondent took it pretty well, but then she started noticing respondent's car wherever she was at work or at her friend's house. He also began texting her with increased frequency through July and August, until he was sending a text message every day, sometimes even every hour throughout the night. Okay? Now, pause right there. Is this happening at school? No. So right now, this is all sort of interesting information, but not necessarily something that can be addressed under Title IX, because so far, it hasn't happened at school. Okay? Text messages were friendly at first, but she didn't respond right away. Complainant stated he would blow up her phone with several short messages, including angry emoticon faces or memes of people crying. At one point, complainant couldn't remember exactly when, but sometime after the school year started, respondent told complainant that if she didn't respond more quickly, she might not get another text from him, ever, with a picture of a rope, suggesting that he would hang himself. Complainant reported this text to her mother, who contacted respondent's father. Respondent's father reportedly blew it off, saying it takes time for broken hearts to heal, and respondent would be fine over time. Complainant stated that as the school year progressed, she received several text messages from respondent that either implied or explicitly threatened he would kill himself if she would not take him back. Okay? Now, this is a very detailed summary of the interview, and there's more. If it is your style to do bullet points of what was told you, that's fine too. As long as the information that you are putting in this report is sufficient for a decision maker to know what happened. Okay? You don't have to write as detailed as I'm giving this to you for as much a training purpose than information about how to write a report. But make sure that the information is sufficient that someone's going to know what happened, right? And has the relevant pieces. And most of what I put in here are in here for a reason, for a training purpose. Okay? At school, once school started back up in August, complainant reported that a respondent just happened to be wherever complainant was. She said a respondent was always outside his class, her class door, no matter what class she had, when the class ended, and would just happen to be walking in the same direction as she was. Complainant had 2 classes with respondent, art and English, but sometime in early October, complainant changed her schedule, switched her art and English class period, so she wouldn't have to be with respondent because he would not leave her alone. Now, quick pause right there. You have a piece of information that is verifiable, right? So note to investigator's mind, check that out. Just cooperate that there was a class change and see if the counselor who changed the class knew anything about why that class was changed. If complainant said anything about why. When asked to explain what she meant by not leave me alone, complainant stated that respondent always sat next to her and asked her questions about the assignment, or about the weekend, or about who she was hanging out with. Complainant stated that respondent never touched her, but he was constantly talking to her, even after she politely asked him to stop so she could work. During one of her classes, complainant was English, respondent told her respondent told her he tried to get a schedule changed so she could be in they could have all their classes together. Complainant isn't sure this is true, but this is what respondent told her. Again, something verifiable. Ask respondent's counselor. Did respondent ever try to get his class changed? And that's not all of those interviews aren't in here, but that's just another flag or something that should be going off in your mind. Corroborate, verify. Complainant reported that around this time he started sending her text messages telling her she looked good in whatever she was wearing, even though he was nowhere in the vicinity where he could see her. This happened 3 or 4 times. Complainant still doesn't know how he was watching her or where he was when he sent those messages. Then sometime around the middle of October, right before fall break, complainant reported that one of her friends told her that respondent posted a TikTok video where he was singing a song about the complainant. He wrote a song about her. In the song, he made some passing reference to the sweet love they had and made. Complainant's friend asked complainant if she'd ever had sex with respondent, because that's what everyone is saying. Complainant reported that she and respondent never had sexual intercourse and only kissed, maybe made out a couple of times, but nothing more. Complainant was insistent that she never had sex with respondent. Why is that important? She has an alleged rape, so why is it important that she says that they never had sex?
Has to do with the term that you brought up earlier, like if it was a wanted relationship or what?
Yeah, it was consensual, right? Also, she's alleging part of her complaint is that he's spreading rumors about her, telling everybody that they had sex, which was unwanted because it never happened, and it spreads the message, well, it contributes to that hostile environment, okay? If it did happen, then what respondent was doing wasn't spreading lies. He was probably sharing something maybe she didn't want him to share, but it wasn't spreading rumors, which is a little bit different, okay? About a week later, complainant learned from another friend that respondent had posted a picture of herself and respondent on Snapchat with the text, best F ever. I'm not going to say that word, but I write it in here with the footnote that says, use the word in your report. If you're very uncomfortable, use asterisks, but whatever you need to do so the decision maker knows what it is that was said, okay? So I apologize, we'll get that off the screen, but that is the purpose of having that up there so you understand that it's okay to use very descriptive language. Having said that, let me also qualify it by saying, if the word that is being used, the offensive term that is being used is an N-word or any other racial slur, do not write that out in full. Okay, that is the one word, no matter what you're told in trainings, when you're writing disciplinary reports, that you can avoid writing in full. And I tell you that on the authority of the Department of Justice, with whom I've been working for the past year as I've been contracting with the Davis School District. So they've, as you know, been under fire for harassment on the basis of race, and one of the concerns they had was that administrators would use that word when writing reports of what kids said. So just as an FYI, keep that out of your vocabulary no matter what. It has nothing to do with sex, but there's just an added bonus of information for you. Okay, later that night, complainant stated that she received a string of text messages from complainant calling her a whore and a slut. Complainant explained she ignored the messages for the most part, immediately deleted them, but later that week, complainant said her Instagram account was hacked and someone posted a picture of her that had been manipulated to show what appeared to be her giving oral sex to someone. Okay? Only the penis is visible in the picture with the caption, quote, "I love this shit, period." She is sure students at school saw it because she got weird looks and at least 2 different boys she'd never met before approached her and gave her their numbers on different occasions. Complainant stated that she finally decided to report what had been going on when she went to the parking lot after school to drive home. As she was pulling out, respondent pulled his car directly behind her and would not leave. Complainant stated that respondent did not get out of his car, and she did not want to get out of her car to talk to him, so she just sat there until the SRO began walking towards them. The next day, complainant reported to her counselor that she felt like respondent was stalking her, and her counselor told the counselor about the car incident. The investigator, and this is the investigator speaking in third person, that's okay. You can also say I if you want to, but keep it consistent. The investigator asked complainant if she had any of the text messages from the respondent or other social media posts, including her own Instagram account. Complainant told the investigator she had deleted the Instagram account post, and she would go back through her phone and talk to friends who saw the post to see if they had any copies. She said she would get back to the investigator in subsequent email communications with the investigator. Complainant sent the investigator screenshots of several text messages, but could not retrieve a copy of the Instagram post. Okay. Also, if she had gotten a copy of that post, best to get law enforcement involved, because who knows what age of the student is supposed to be. Okay, so that is, oh, and then when asked who the investigator should interview, complainant provided the following names, okay, with the initials. Quick footnote on that, investigators should ask parties who they'd like to interview, but should not necessarily limit interviews to those individuals. You might interview more people than who the parties give you to interview. Okay, so now we've got Natasha's story.
Interviewing everyone that they suggest,
You don't have to.
but
Only if you feel like the people are have information. When they give you names to interview, it's okay to say, what does this person know? You know, I'm not necessarily going to interview your 10 best friends that don't know anything about the situation.
well, like what was asked earlier too, though, if, say you interview the first one, if you have enough evidence to, they bring evidence to the table, there's no need to keep interviewing.
Yeah, exactly right. If you feel like you have sufficient evidence, you don't have to continue. Okay. And remember, at least this year, the investigator is not the decision maker. So the investigator, you bring all the information you can, and the decision maker determines whether it is sufficient evidence to determine that it happened or didn't happen. Okay, so that's what Natasha says. Let's see how Loki responds. So now Loki should be given an opportunity to respond to all of that. And it was a lot, and I included it again, mostly for training purposes. But in the interview with Loki, the investigator should be asking Loki about all of the different allegations that Natasha raised that could constitute stalking or her hostile environment. So investigator asked if respondent received the notice allegations, explained that the interview was an opportunity for respondent to respond to those allegations. Investigator asked if they could start by having respondent explain his relationship with the complainant during the summer of 2025. Respondent explained that he and complainant met at a party, hit it off, started hanging out a lot after that. He said they were totally digging each other until all of a sudden she dumped him out of the blue. Okay. So it's pretty consistent with what Natasha said, right? She explained why she dumped him, but so far the facts line up. Investigator asked respondent if they were sexually active. Again, because that question is relevant to whether this TikTok video is a restatement of what happened or him trying to spread rumors about her and ruin her reputation. When asked, respondent said they were sexually active, okay? When asked how often respondent and complainant had sex, respondent hesitated, but then stated he and respondent had sex one time, but were close to having sex several other times. Respondent stated that it was shortly after they had sex that complainant broke up with him. So now we have a dispute of facts. One of them is saying they had a sexual relationship, the other is saying they did not. When asked how respondent handled the breakup, respondent acknowledged it was hard. He said he really liked the complainant, and though she really thought she really liked him too. Respondent said he didn't see it coming. He admitted to showing up at her work and her friends' houses during the summer because he was hoping he could catch her to talk. But then he chickened out when he saw her and just drove away. Respondent stated he finally decided that being friends was better than nothing, so he started texting her. Respondent said he didn't text her very often, but acknowledged that if she did not respond, he would get frustrated and text her again. When asked if he ever told her or suggested to her that he would commit suicide if she didn't respond quickly, respondent said he may have said something, but he wasn't really serious. When asked how often he said he would kill himself if she didn't respond or she didn't get back to him, respondent just shrugged his shoulders. He didn't know. Okay. Again, a lot of these facts line up with just a different perception of what it all meant. The investigator asked about respondent's classes and how many classes he had with complainant. Respondent said they had 2, for a while, but then she switched out of those classes for some reason. He didn't know. Respondent stated that he thought it was because complainant said that she focused better before lunch and wanted an academic class before lunch instead of after. Investigator asked respondent if he ever told complainant that he was going to change his schedule so he'd have all the same classes. And respondent said, oh yeah, but I was just joking around. Asked if he followed her from class to class, respondent stated most of their classes were near each other, so he just wait for complainant after class and then walk in the direction of his next class, which just happened to be next to her class. Okay, what can we do to corroborate that? Pull their class schedules. Yeah, is that true? Well, if that's true, then maybe that is why he was going in that same direction. Respondent was asked if he sent complainant text messages telling her she looked good, even though it appeared to complainant that he was nowhere in the vicinity when he sent them. Respondent appeared surprised and responded that he did send complainant text messages occasionally telling her she looked good because he wanted to compliment her. Respondent said he always sent these messages after seeing her and wasn't trying to be sneaky. Respondent said for example, respondent said if he saw complainant at her locker in the morning, he'd send her a text sometime that day telling her she looked great. Respondent acknowledged he wasn't always in the area when he sent the text. Sometimes he would just think about her throughout the day and remember that he thought she looked good that day, so he sent her the text. Respondent said he thought it would make complainant feel good. In response to how often this occurred, he replied 3 or 4 times. Respondent offered to look through his phone to verify. The investigator asked respondent about his TikTok video. Respondent replied that by showing the investigator the video. Okay, the investigator should take a copy of the video. This is a video that does not have inappropriate images. In the video, respondent sings about complainant and does say in his song, "We had sweet, sweet love," in his refrain. The very last refrain changes the word had to made, stating, "We made sweet, sweet love." When asked about that change, respondent said, well, it was sweet. Respondent admitted to taking a snap of the complainant and him together with the caption, as you see. Respondent said he thought the snaps deleted automatically after 10 seconds, and he didn't realize anyone except those who followed him on Snapchat would see it. Respondent stated he doesn't have many followers on Snapchat, so he didn't think it would go anywhere. Respondent stated that complainant did confront him about that and he felt badly, not because it was untrue, but because he didn't mean for the video to spread around. When asked if he sent complainant text messages later that night calling her sexually offensive names, respondent acknowledged that he might have sent 1 or 2 because he was mad that she was denying they had sex. Respondent heard about the Instagram post, but he never saw it. It had been deleted by the time he'd heard about it. Respondent stated he never hacked into complainant's account. He said he didn't even know how to do that. Respondent stated that he felt bad for complainant and didn't believe that complainant posted the picture of herself because it just isn't like complainant to do so. But he was adamant that he didn't post it. Finally, respondent stated he did not intentionally block complainant's car. He stated he was pulling out of the parking lot at Avenger High School when his car stalled, and it happened to be right behind complainant. He was able to start it up again just as the SRO was approaching. Okay?
They're just laughing because it's Loki, and we all know Loki's such a nice guy.
Right? There's some bias there. Yeah. The investigator told respondent to provide any text messages, snaps, or anything else he could provide, and who he should investigate. Okay. Do you have any thoughts now about who might be more credible based on the interview with respondent and with complainant?
Just like reality, all teenagers aren't credible.
Right? You get a little, and I think one of the other reasons I put so many details is that in truth, as kids are, you get some pieces that, yeah, that probably happened, and some pieces that you're like, really? Lots of information that gets complicated. These are not always straightforward. It's not always a matter of, he touched me here at this time in this one place at this one instance. Did it happen or did it not? It can be complicated, and so you're going to kind of have to break
It just
down.
seems like as far as credibility, like the accusations that Loki wouldn't deny it and then he just kind of spin it. That's how it feels to me. He wouldn't deny that he didn't do it. He would just say, oh no, I did text her, or I did like the car thing. Or
Right.
Almost, there's a pattern there almost every time.
Minimizing, shall we call it? You
Yeah.
heard that term, minimizing?
So to me, just reading those two, his doesn't seem as credible as hers.
Okay. And remember, one of the requirements of Title IX is not necessarily to just come to the conclusion, did stalking occur? But also, for the decision maker, to determine whether each of the facts alleged, the relevant facts alleged, happened. So this is going to get complicated because there are so many facts. So when you get down to the end, we'll kind of break it down. Did he intentionally stall his car behind complainant as a pattern of following her throughout the year? So that's one example. Did he post this video on Instagram after hacking into her account? So there are several facts that are all going to support whether stalking occurred or not. And this is something that courts do all the time, that administrators are not in the habit of doing, breaking it down to each and every factual allegation. And that is something that we're going to have to get better at doing because it is a requirement of this procedures. Okay, let's see what TS says. So Tony Starks is currently complainant's boyfriend. He attends Stark University as a freshman. Okay, his father owns it. Or maybe he does, I don't know. Tony Stark and complainant have been in a romantic relationship since August of 2025. TS reported the complainant had talked to him about respondent's conduct. Specifically, TS said the complainant told him respondent was texting her a lot, following her around in school, and wouldn't leave her alone during English class. When asked what sort of texts complainant talked about, TS said that complainant showed TS messages in which respondent called her these names. TS said messages were sent in a string of texts with other messages about it being a liar and why she would deny what she knows is true. TS said that complainant didn't know what respondent was talking about. TS also said respondent was spreading rumors about having slept with complainant, but TS knew those rumors weren't true. If someone says, I know the rumors aren't true, what's the follow-up question? How do you know they're not true? Exactly. When asked how he knew, TS stated complainant is a virgin by her current boyfriend. Okay. When asked if complainant told TS about any other communication or posts, TS told the investigator about complainant's Instagram account. TS said respondent hacked her account and posted the picture, and that complainant was so not like that. Again, when the investigator asked TS how he knew that respondent hacked into her account, TS replied, who else would it be? TS doesn't know respondent beyond what complainant has told him. TS has never met respondent. Why is that last paragraph important? It's all hearsay. Yeah. That doesn't mean that we're not going to look at the evidence. It doesn't mean that we're not going to consider the evidence. But it's all coming from who? From the complainant.
Who's his girlfriend?
Who's his girlfriend? Who has a vested interest in this. Now, that's not saying it's not true.
Why did we go into this occupation? That's what I'm asking myself right now.
Right? Yeah, I know. And sadly, this is like the world we live in, right?
So I went to law school if we would have gone.
Right?
We're
Okay.
here though, so we might as well be trained good. Do it right.
Sadly, this is not what uncommon for your profession. I get it.
Nail.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to have Pepper Potts, who is complainant's best friend. Pepper Potts has known complainants since they were both in 5th grade. And again, as you're talking to these people, you're going to be looking at their credibility and what motives they might have for telling you one thing or another. With Tony, he didn't tell you anything that complainant didn't tell you, because everything, all the information he had, he got from complainant. And he didn't know anything about respondent. So his interview was sort of helpful, sort of not. Okay, Pepper Potts, complainant's best friend. She's known complainants, they were both in 5th grade. Pepper Potts also knows respondent, but not well. Pepper Potts, I'm going to say Pepper Potts instead of PP, just for obvious reasons. Met respondent at the same end of the year party where complainant and respondent met. Pepper stated that respondent is weird and has some serious issues. When asked to elaborate, because you're going to want to do that, if someone says they're weird, what does that mean exactly? Pepper explained that respondent is really intense and he just doesn't know when to stop. Pepper stated when complainant broke up with him, he would stalk complainant, and you put stalk in quotes because that is the question that you're investigating, but that was her words. So you're going to want to use that in quotes. Would stalk complainant by parking his car outside her job and also friends' homes, just waiting for the complainant to come out. Pepper did not work with complainant, and Pepper never saw respondent at the homes of complainants, but complainant told Pepper about it. Pepper also said that complainant showed her text messages that respondent had sent to her. Now she and Tony saw the text messages, so those weren't just hearsay, right? They actually witnessed and saw these messages from respondent. Sometime in the summer after they'd broken up and when she threatened to kill himself, if complainant didn't write back. Pepper saw those text messages directly. Pepper reported she is the one who told complainant to tell her mom about the messages. With regard to the TikTok video that respondent made, Pepper says she heard about it, but she never saw it. Now, this TikTok video, you know, you can keep asking kids questions about it, but respondent admitted to making that video, right? So the allegation is he made this video in which he said that he made love to her. That was the allegation. And in fact, respondent said, yes, I did. So that's not really a fact in dispute. The question is how widespread was it and whether or not it was true or not true. Okay? So, complainant and when asked if respondent and complainant had a sexual relationship, Pepper hesitated and then said, no, not really. The investigator asked Pepper what she meant by no, not really, and Pepper said, no, not at all. I mean, they did not have sex at all. Okay? As an investigator, if you notice something odd in your interview, like a hesitation before a response, put that in your report. That's helpful for a decision maker to hear, especially if you find it odd because the interviewee has been so forthright and talkative and suddenly it's, well, no, not really, well, no. Okay? When asked why respondent might make up that in a song on TikTok, Pepper stated it's because he's messed up and he likes attention. Pepper didn't have many classes with complainant, so she never personally saw respondent outside the classroom. She never personally saw respondent follow complainant down the hall, but complainant told her about it. And Pepper said that complainant said it creeped her out. Pepper saw complainant's Instagram account. Pepper stated it was a big deal and everyone was talking about it. When asked if complainant would ever post something like that, remember this is the one of her account was hacked, showing a picture which presumably was her giving oral sex to someone. Her face was not in it, but you could see everything else. Pepper said that complainant would never do that. Pepper said that complainant is a good girl and doesn't do stuff like that. When asked what stuff was, Pepper said, you know, sex and stuff. Pepper was not in the parking lot the day complainant was blocked by respondent, but complainant told her about it. The investigator asked Pepper if she'd noticed a change in complainant this year, dropping grades, less interested in extracurricular activities. Pepper said she thought complainant was doing really well in school, that she won some award for highest grades after first term. When asked about volleyball, Pepper reported that complainant was going to try out, but her parents wanted her to focus on the piano instead of volleyball, so she didn't try out. Okay? So what does that tell you about what complainant said with regard to her grades and her access to educational opportunities?
It makes no sense for her in that.
There's some questions, right? There's some questions about what complainant is saying. On the one hand, complainant saying her grades dropped, and her best friend's saying, yeah, she's doing great. She won some award, which you could verify. And complainant saying, I dropped out of volleyball because this kid keeps stalking me. And Pepper's saying she dropped out of volleyball because her parents told her she had to. So there's some question with regard to credibility in some of the stuff the complainant is saying. Okay, let's hear from Bruce Banner. Bruce is friends with complainant. He knows
who trust the Hulk too. I mean, he's just a good dude.
Right? I don't think I'm gonna advocate this investigation. He's got two.
Because I've heard she's sleeping with.
He's got a temper, but he's a great guy.
That's true. That's true. Pepper might be having a relationship with Tony behind complainant's back.
She's just trying to get it.
That confidence.
Good point. You guys know too much about these characters. All right, so Bruce is friends with complainant. He knows who respondent is, but Bruce doesn't know respondent well. He told the investigator the complainant is super nice, and he feels bad that respondent is doing all this stuff to her. The investigator asked Bruce to elaborate, and Bruce said, like the text messages and TikTok video, and I can't believe he hacked into her Instagram account. The investigator asked if he personally saw any of these things, and he stated he did not see the text messages, but complainant told him that respondent had sent a lot of, and threatened suicide if she didn't get back together with him, called her inappropriate names. Bruce said that he did see the TikTok video. Someone he's friends with, who's also friends with the respondent, showed it to Bruce. Bruce didn't think it was that big of a deal, and it just sounded like a sappy love song. And Bruce said he expected it to be much worse because he'd heard people talking about how respondent was bragging about having sex with complainant, but when Bruce saw the video, he said he wasn't even sure that respondent said anything about making love to complainant. Bruce admitted he wasn't really listening very closely and might not have watched the whole video. Right? And it wasn't until the very end that he changed the refrain from "we had such sweet love" to "we made such sweet love." So Bruce his information might not be a whole very helpful to you. But complainant asked you to interview him, so you did, and this is what you got. Oh, and Bruce really likes complainant as a friend, but reported she can be a little dramatic at times. When asked to elaborate, what does that mean? Bruce said he couldn't really articulate what he meant. He simply stated she's just known for causing drama. That's all. When asked about the Instagram post, Bruce said he's pretty sure it wasn't complainant. He reported that even though she's dramatic, she's a good girl and isn't about that. When asked what that is, he said, doing shit with boys. Bruce had asked if he noticed anything off with complainant, and Bruce said complainant is dating a college boy and seems pretty excited about it. And so that's Bruce's information. Now let's hear what respondents' witnesses have to say. So now we're going to talk to Thor. Okay? Thor is respondent's twin brother. Thor stated up front that even though they're twins, he and respondent are nothing alike. Thor said that respondent can be intense, and that Thor described himself as chill. The investigator asked Thor to share what he knew about respondent's relationship with complainant. Thor responded that he knew respondent met complainant at a party, respondent really liked her, respondent talked about her a lot, and Thor said that he knew complainant was going to break up with him because respondent was coming on too strong. Thor said he tried to tell respondent that, but respondent didn't listen. When complainant broke up with respondent, Thor wasn't surprised, although he said he felt bad for respondent because it did sort of come out of the blue, and because they lost their virginity to each other. This is for Thor offering this up, right? And as an investigator, you're going, wait, what? Tell me about that. When the investigator asked Thor to tell him more about what Thor knew about respondent's sexual relationship with complainant, Thor stated the night that it happened, it being sex between complainant and respondent woke Thor up to tell him about it. Thor recalls being a little surprised because respondent had never kissed a girl and complainant had a reputation for being a good girl. But he believed respondent because respondent was, quote, freaking out. When asked why respondent was freaking out, Thor explained that because in their religion they're not supposed to have sex until they're married, but also respondent was super excited because he really liked complainant. And complainant's hot as hell, quote, it was just a day or two after that complainant dumped respondent. Now, based on that information, what do you think now about their likelihood that they're having a sexual relationship? It's still hearsay, right? Thor is telling you what respondent told him, but why is this perhaps more credible than all the information Tony gave you about Natasha?
You didn't even ask for it.
It wasn't asked, right? And when did the information come to Thor? Middle of the night right after it happened. Yeah, there's something about this contemporaneous confession or report that makes something more likely to have happened. If you have someone telling you, well, yeah, respondent told me this yesterday after this investigation begun and you're asking questions about it, that's one thing. But if the witness is saying, oh yeah, he told me about it right when it happened, way before we even got down this road, and he was excited because and it fits what you would expect a respondent to act like, it supports the credibility of the person who initially is saying this is happening, okay? So, going on, Thor had not seen any of the text messages that respondent sent complainant, but isn't surprised that respondent sent complainant a bunch of texts. He didn't know anything about what they said, and the investigator did not ask him to speculate whether any of the messages reportedly sounded like respondent because Thor didn't know. Thor had heard about a TikTok video, said he wasn't surprised. That sounded like something respondent would do. Thor had seen the Instagram post of complainant, although he was unaware that complainant was accusing respondent of hacking into her account to post it. So he'd seen it, but he didn't know the complainant was saying it was Loki that did it. Thor said respondent was not really smart with computers, and he didn't think respondent would know how to hack into an account. T.O. reported the respondent had a best friend who was a tech genius, but respondent can hardly turn on a computer. Thor also said that respondent might be intense, but he's not a jerk. The investigator asked Thor if respondent's car tended to stall frequently. Thor would know because it's his twin brother. Maybe they even share the car. And Thor looked confused by the question. Thor said it's a brand new car. Why would it stall? Okay, so that's Thor's information. Now we've got Peter Quill, who is respondent's best friend, who's the tech genius. They've been best friends since kindergarten. Peter said that respondent and complainant were dating for a couple of months after they met at a party in the spring. Peter reported respondent really liked complainant, was excited to be in this relationship with her. When asked how respondent felt when they broke up, Peter explained respondent was devastated. Peter said respondent can be a little dramatic and sometimes intense, but he reemphasized how much respondent liked complainant. When asked about the text messages respondent reportedly sent complainant, Peter said he hadn't seen all of them, but respondent did show Peter a few text messages where complainant said she would be so sad if respondent killed himself. Peter explained this was in response to a text from respondent where he said he might not respond ever again with a meme of someone with a noose around his neck. Peter said it wasn't unusual for respondent to make threats of suicide. Peter was used to this, and he didn't take those threats seriously because he knew respondent well enough to know respondent would never actually do anything. So again, this just all goes to the question of whether or not Loki did send text messages to Natasha with the threat of killing himself if she didn't respond, which in and of itself isn't necessarily stalking or a hostile environment, but altogether it could be evidence of such. So best friend confirms it. Loki didn't deny it, he just downplayed it, right? That he was just kidding. When asked if he had any other knowledge about text messages that might be concerning the complainant, Peter said that respondent did tell him that one night when respondent was mad at complainant, respondent sent a number of text messages that were not very nice. Peter said respondent didn't elaborate and Peter didn't ask. Peter circled back to why respondent was so sad when complainant broke up with him. Peter stated respondent and complainant had sex, and respondent thought it meant something to him, but only a few days later complainant broke up with him. So now you have two people who respondent told about his relationship, and now those two people are offering that to you as the investigator. When asked if respondent followed complainant around school, Peter said, well, not really. He said respondent had classes near complainant's classes, so we like to wait for her outside of class and walk her to the next class. Sometimes complainant would walk with him and talk to him, but other times complainant was talking to someone else or on her phone. Peter had a few classes with respondent, so that's how he knows this information. Peter didn't know anything about respondent following complainant to work. When asked if he'd heard about the Instagram account, this is where it gets interesting. Peter looked down at the ground and said he'd heard about it. Peter's response was quiet and had a different tone than the rest of the conversation. When asked what he knew about it, Peter stated, respondent didn't do it. Peter said respondent did not have the technical skills to be able to hack into an account. When asked how he knew that there was an allegation that complainant's account was hacked, Peter stopped talking. So no one had told Peter that complainant was alleging that her account got hacked. He knew about the post, but he immediately jumped to this information. Respondent didn't hack into her account. Peter stopped talking. Then Peter started to cry and said that he was the one who hacked complainant's Instagram account because he was mad at complainant that she was denying having sex with respondent. He felt bad for his best friend, wanted to do something to get back at her on his friend's behalf. So he hacked into her account and manipulated the photo of the complainant. And, oops, arrow, close to the caption. When asked if respondent directed him to do that, because that's the next question, right? Like, did Loki know that you were doing this? Did he tell you to do this? Peter insisted that respondent had no idea. And respondent would be upset if he knew. Peter said that he did all of this on his own because he was mad at the complainant. Peter didn't know anything about the day respondent allegedly bought his car. He said the respondent's car, he didn't know that respondent's car stalled. He has never been in the car when it's stalled. Okay? The little footnote on the bottom suggests that you might have an investigation, a Title IX complaint against Peter. So we're not going to talk about that today. But that's just what that footnote is. Okay, so now you've got some more information. We still have to determine a number of things. So let's get some of the employees. Okay, so HP is the counselor. She's not respondent's counselor. She was interviewed because she is complainant's counselor, and the investigator wanted to know if the complainant had reported to Hope any incidents with respondent prior to the most recent incident which led to the Title IX complaint. Hope said that she hadn't spoken directly to Hope, and she felt like respondent was stalking her and tried to block her car in. Hope reported this incident to Principal Rogers. Rogers, of course, is the principal of Adventure High School. However, sometime around the middle of September, one of complainant's friends, Pepper Potts, who was also on Hope's case management load, came in to talk to Hope. Pepper reported that she had a friend who had this boyfriend and they had sex, but the friend felt really guilty for having sex and broke up with him. Pepper reported the friend started to feel like the boy was obsessed with her because the boy obsessively sent texts to the friends and wouldn't leave her alone. Later, Pepper visited with Hope again and reported that the same friend just had her Instagram account hacked, and they're pretty sure it was this boy. Pepper described the picture that was on the account, same picture that we're talking about here. Pepper didn't want to tell Hope who the friend was because she promised the friend she wouldn't tell anyone the friend had sex with the boy. But Hope knew that Pepper and complainant were best friends and believed that Pepper was talking about complainant. At the end of Hope's conversation with Pepper, Hope asked Pepper if she was talking about complainant, and Pepper nodded, confirmed. Okay. So now, how many of you think it's more likely than not that complainant and respondent had a sexual relationship at least one time in the summer before all this happened? Okay? Okay, a lot of you. Again, which doesn't necessarily mean that Loki wasn't stalking Natasha. It just means that of all the different factors that we're looking at, there's some question of credibility with regard to that piece. And she calls into question credibility about other things, and also whether or not all of this was unwanted. Okay? So English teacher, Scott Lang, he was interviewed because they were both in the English class until she transferred out. Scott said he didn't notice anything out of the ordinary between the two of them. He didn't have a seating chart, so they didn't always sit together, but he said occasionally he recalls them sitting by each other. Scott said the complainant transferred out of his classes because, according to what complainant told him, she focused better in the morning and wanted English when she was better able to focus. Complainant never reported to him anything that made her uncomfortable about respondent. Complainant is still in his class, just in a different period. Okay? Note, other teachers were interviewed and asked if they witnessed respondent waiting for complainant or following in the halls, but other teachers didn't have any information, so it's not included here. Resource officer saw respondent close car behind complainants around the 1st December. JR didn't pay much attention, looked like to him that respondent, but it looked to him like respondent intentionally blocked complainant. He heard complainant honk her horn. JR said respondent didn't leave immediately when he saw JR walking to the car. Then in response to the investigator's question about why respondent didn't speed away when he saw JR, he said, I guess his car could have been stalled. And then finally, Mary Jane Watson, who was the witness that was suggested, that respondent suggested to the investigator that the investigator interviewed Mary Jane Watson. So the investigator went back. She's a volleyball player at Avenger High School. She's a friend of the respondent, but she, again, respondent requested that she be interviewed. Mary Jane was interviewed. When asked what information she had to share with the investigator, Mary Jane said complainant was lying about why she didn't try out for volleyball. Mary Jane said that everyone knew complainant didn't try out because her parents wanted her to focus on the piano. MJ clarified that everyone meant all the girls on the volleyball team. Mary Jane reported that complainant was making a big deal about it at the end of the season last year, crying because she was going to miss everyone and couldn't believe her parents were making her quit. Mary Jane said it was a big thing because complainant was actually really good, the team didn't want her to quit, but her parents wanted her to be a concert pianist, so she had to quit. Mary Jane didn't have any other information. But this is relevant, right? Quick summary of the documentary evidence, then we'll take a quick break. So we've got the TikTok video, which just describes what happened. Again, keeping in mind that the investigative report should have a summary of what the evidence shows, in addition to actually providing the evidence, but that way the decision makers aren't going to have to go through and read everything or listen to everything. They can just see your summary. Summary of the text messages, okay? And I tried to write how kids write. If you don't write me back now, you might never see me again. Another one with a noose around his neck. I can't live without you. Please write me back. Your silence is literally killing me. Respondent had deleted the text messages about using sexually offensive terms, but both parties acknowledged that he did send them. Respondent was able to find text messages he sent to complainant in which he told her she looks good. There were 5 messages sent between September 1 and October 30th. Date and time stamp indicate the messages were sent during the school day, during school hours. Attendance records show that they were both in school during those days. Neither of them had the copy of the Snapchat, but there's no dispute as to its existence because the respondent admitted. The security cameras only go back 30 days, but they do show roughly 10 to 12 times when respondents seem to be following complainant or walking with her. Footage is inconclusive because it is not evident if complainant is trying to avoid respondent, and respondent doesn't look secretive. Also, the footage is not clear. Okay, so let's take just a second and talk about disputed and undisputed facts. We'll finish the investigative report, take a 5-minute break, and then we'll put on decision maker hats and determine whether or not Loki should be expelled from school for stalking Natasha. This is a suggestion about how to write reports. Not all investigative reports will have it broken up between disputed and undisputed facts, but will help your decision makers immensely. If you as investigators, I'm talking to you now as investigators, in 10 minutes I'll be talking to you as decision makers. But if the investigator writes, here are the things that nobody disputes. So decision maker, you don't have to worry about spending time figuring out if these things are true or not true. Let's see if we can name them real quick. So both students are in 11th grade. Okay, that's also background information. No one's disputing that. They had a short romantic relationship in the summer before their 11th grade year. Nobody's disputing that. Everyone agrees. Complainant broke up with respondent sometime before their junior year. Again, no one's disputing that. While complainant and respondent were together in the summer before 11th grade, they sent mutually friendly texts to each other. Okay? After the parties broke up, respondent sent text messages to complainant, some of which included statements suggesting he would kill himself if she did not respond to his messages in a more timely manner. It's disputed whether respondent was serious or kidding in those messages, but there's no dispute. He acknowledges having sent those. And by the way, the undisputed facts are not facts that you believe are more likely than not to be true. Undisputed facts are facts that neither party is arguing over. They both admit that it happened. So don't waste your time trying to figure out if that fact is true or not, because they both admit it happened. So that's what you're going to list in this undisputed facts section. At the beginning of 11th grade, complainant and respondent had 2 classes together. That's undisputed. Around October, complainant switched her classes, so she no longer had any classes with respondent. No one argues about that. Respondent posted a TikTok video in mid-October where respondent sang a song about complainant, including making a vague reference to having sexual intercourse with the complainant. Again, no one's disputing that that in fact happened. Both parties agree that respondent posted a Snapchat with a picture of the 2 of them with the caption. Everyone agrees that that happened. Both parties agree that respondent sent complainant 1 or 2 messages where respondent called complainant sexually offensive names. Complainant remembers more than 2, respondent remembers 1 for sure. It is undisputed that a post appeared on complainant's Instagram account showing a picture of complainant having oral sex with the caption, "I love the shit." Respondent's friend admitted to hacking into complainant's account, and posting the picture. Neither respondent nor complainant were aware of this confession prior to the investigation. But it is undisputed, at least because you have someone else admitting to have done it. Both parties agree that complainant was blocked in by respondent's car, but it is disputed whether respondent intentionally tried to block complainant in the car. So those are all the things that the decision maker does not have to try to figure out. Those are undisputed facts, and it will help the decision maker if you can outline those. The disputed facts, on the other hand, include the following. Respondent claims the parties had sex, complainant denied that. Complainant said respondent sent her text messages obsessively. Respondent said he sent text messages because he wanted to be friends. Complainant alleged respondent posted untrue statements that they had sex online. Not that they had online sex, but posted the statements online. Complainant said that respondent followed her often, would not leave her alone. Respondent said that at the beginning of the year they had 2 classes together. Even after respondent checked out of those classes, complainant checked out of those classes, they still had classes that were near each other. They just happened to be in the hallway when she was. Complainant stated their stalking was so bad, she decided not to try out for volleyball. To avoid respondent, respondent contended this is not the reason she didn't try out for volleyball. Complainant stated that respondent hacked into her account and posted it. Respondent said he did not do this. You have that undisputed fact above, so you don't really have to worry about that one. Complainant alleged that respondent followed her and once blocked her car and on purpose. Respondent said he did not intentionally do this. So that is the investigative report. That's the conclusion. That is what the decision maker gets, as well as the parties. Okay? And again, it's very detailed, more than you probably need to have, but for purposes of this discussion, I wanted to go through it. So let's take a couple minutes, 5-10 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up with how to determine whether or not Loki is responsible.
So when we